When you're driven, the need to accomplish a goal is relentless. Hard work and ambition compel you to do whatever's necessary. In my work as a personal injury trial lawyer for 18 years, it's common to meet driven people. Those with drive can have different personalities, careers, or backgrounds, but they possess one common factor. Despite their passions, driven people want to surround and motivate themselves with other driven people. If you want to learn how to overcome obstacles by learning from others, then tune in here. This is the Driven Crowd Podcast. Thank you for tuning in to episode 3 of the Driven Crowd Podcast, fueled by Snelling's Law. I'm your host, Scott Snellings. A few years ago, I was at a gala for the Collin County Children's Advocacy Center. And they just finished up the live auction, and then there was one more thing that they had to give. And it was a surprise auction item. It was a trip to Italy for 4. And as I sat there, I thought, and I had this little voice in my head that said, man, my wife has always wanted to go to Italy. This is for a great organization. I should bid on this. And so I stuck up my paddle. And then this little voice in my head said, hey, you know what? It's a trip for 4. You could take your best friend, who's also your kidney donor, and his wife. And so I raised my paddle yet again. And this little voice just kept going, you got to have this. You got to have this. And so I raised my paddle again. And again and again, until finally no one else was raising their paddles anymore, and the trip was mine. After I won the trip, I sat back and I looked over to my left, and I realized that little voice in my head wasn't in my head. It was actually our guest today, Dan Powers, who is the Chief Operating Officer of the Children's Advocacy Center. Dan, welcome to the Driven Crowd Podcast.
Yeah, that was my voice, Scott. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. And it was a very profitable voice for the Advocacy Center, no doubt.
It was.
So a whole lot of people have no idea what the Children's Advocacy Center is. So give us some background. Sure. What is it? What do you do? Why do you exist?
Well, the Children's Advocacy Center of Collin County is a nonprofit organization. We're a charity. What we do is we bring together all of the people who deal with child abuse here in Collin County. So we partner with Child Protective Services, law enforcement, the district attorney's office, medical providers, therapists, social workers, all together in one place to minimize trauma that kids experience when they've been abused. Our staff consists of therapists, social workers. We have what we call forensic interviewers who interview kids. We have our family advocacy program that provides support for those families when abuse happens in that family, often causes housing or financial crises. We've got a top-notch clinical team that provides that healing piece, all part of our nonprofit. But like I said, we partner with law enforcement, Child Protective Services, who are making sure kids are safe, and importantly, putting bad guys in jail too, who hurt kids too. We've got a great partnership with our district attorney's office too. But our job as the advocacy center is to bring all those folks together, have that one solid goal of providing safety, and healing and justice for kids, and making sure bad guys are accountable for what they do. So in turn, we're making Collin County safer, and kids are not having to have abuse follow them throughout their life. They get control of their lives again because abuse takes all that power away from them. So our goal is that they're happy, healthy, and they're in control of their life again.
Fantastic. And so correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is before a Children's Advocacy Center, the Children's Advocacy Center model was out there, there's a cry for abuse, there's a cry out, and this child is interviewed by the responding officer, and then by some sort of an investigator, and then by who knows how many other people. How does the Children's Advocacy Center change that model?
Well, you're right. And I was actually, I've been doing this for over 33 years now, almost close to 35. And I started as a CPS investigator in Dallas. And as you said, what happened was if a child was brave enough to make that outcry of abuse and tell somebody someone was hurting them, they may be interviewed by 6 or 7 different people at different places. A police station, a hospital, a scary state building. I worked in a horrible, nasty state building. So what kids were telling us was what happened to me was pretty horrible, but what happened afterwards was pretty horrible too. Because these adults, some of them were caring, some of them kids interpreted them not caring, some believed, some didn't believe. And so that experience just increased the trauma kids experience. So the idea of bringing the professionals together in one place allows us to have one place to interview that child. As I said, our forensic interviewers are the ones who interview those kids now. They're specially trained to talk to a child at their level in an appropriate kind of therapeutic way, but allow them to tell their story in what we call a narrative approach, not asking a bunch of questions, allowing them to just to tell their story. And I call it a sacred story, because when a child tells about what's happened to them, we're often the first people to get those details. And it's the first step of healing for that child. They're taking control of their life back. So that forensic interviewer will interview that child, again, specially trained to understand not to lead the child in any way. And actually, at our advocacy center, we use what we call blind interviews. So the interviewer themselves knows nothing about the case. So there can't be any allegation we led that child down a path or anything like that. They know nothing about it. Our partners will watch that interview, and if they have questions, they can buzz into, or the interviewer will stop and ask for questions in the middle of the interview and come back and take care of that. And then that interview is preserved now on digital. It used to be, I always say videotape, I'm old, but digitally preserved. So if another member of the team needs to watch that, they can watch it and not have to re-interview that child. That starts the healing process. Once that kind of secret is out, everybody gets moving. And what used to happen was you trade calls with people. You may or may not be doing what you need to do, unfortunately. Again, back in the old days, we're accountable to each other. We kind of live together. So if I walk down the hall and say, what's going on with this case, I'm going to know right then. And so there's some great accountability, but also that support from each other. We're making sure that case, what happens for that child, their safety, their healing, for that family also is top priority for the team.
And so after the interview process is completed, what is your role moving forward through, you mentioned a partnership with the district attorney's office and putting the bad guys in jail. What is the Advocacy Center's role from that initial outcry, the interview,
Sure.
and then moving forward?
So our role is coordinating that case. So from the second that actually report happens, we actually have a staff member who reads every CPS report that comes in to Collin County. So if you as a professional make a report, or anybody is a mandatory reporter here in Texas, that report's made, it goes to a kind of a clearinghouse in Austin, but after that, it's sent to the jurisdiction where that child lives. So here in Collin County, a member of our staff will be one of the first people who read that, and they automatically get the team together. They'll start coordinating that case. So one of our main jobs is coordinating the case, making sure nothing falls through the cracks, making sure everybody's doing what they need to do and has the information they need to do the best they can. So throughout the process, after that forensic interview, we'll have a case staffing within a few weeks, bring all those professionals together in the same room, discuss the case. A member of the district attorney's office is there, so law enforcement's already communicating with the district attorney's office, and then making sure any other services that family needs are there. As I mentioned before, it's not uncommon for that to cause a financial crisis in a family. About 96% of kids know their abuser in some way, and often it's a family member. So it causes all sorts of angst and anxiety and trauma within the family, but also can cause major financial issues too. So we want to make sure that that support is there. The number one reason why kids recant their outcry is lack of caregiver support. And often that's a dynamic of what might be going on in the family and the adult relationships that are going on. So we want to make sure the adults also have as much support as we give to those children too, so they can support the kids. So our job is to coordinate that all through the process, from day one all the way through the criminal prosecution, where we'll help get kids ready for court. We provide we call Collin Kids in Court, which is a wonderful program that we have that myself and one of our district attorneys developed 18 years ago. And we bring the kids to the courthouse. We show them the courthouse. We have a district judge there. We actually have a full jury box. We have a member of the defense bar actually participates too. And kids get to understand what court is, and most importantly, what it's not. It's not Judge Judy, those kinds of things. They get a chance to sit on the witness stand and answer questions about their favorite cookie or their favorite movie, things like that, to bring some predictability. So that's one piece of it, that criminal justice piece. And here in Collin County, if you hurt kids, you're going to be held responsible because, number one, our law enforcement is amazing. The folks that do it are specially trained detectives that deal with child abuse. The team is doing everything to coordinate that, so supporting the family, supporting the child, and then our great partnership with the district attorney's office. Then we have juries who just are not okay with people hurting kids here in Collin County. And so if you hurt a kid, you're going to go away, and we're going to be safer. So that's one piece, that justice piece. The healing piece is that we'll coordinate a therapeutic intervention for that family too. So we provide therapy absolutely free to children who've experienced abuse and their non-offending family members. So that's important too, because a child is often hurt in a family system or some kind of system. So we offer services to the adults in that child's life and their siblings too, if they need to. Give you kind of a scenario. Little Susie, who's 7, has told us about her dad touching her. Well, Bobby, who thinks his dad is the greatest man in the whole wide world, has nothing to do with this, is not understanding why dad's been arrested because something his sister said. So we're going to work with him and help him understand and help him deal with the process too, as well as their mom, to help her support her kids. It's not uncommon for parents that we work with to let us know that they've experienced some kind of trauma in their life too. So we're going to provide services to her also. All that kind of systemic way. Best thing about our service is we don't take external pay. And so we're not having to call an insurance company asking for more sessions, anything like that. We develop our intervention based on assessments we do with the kids and families, and then what a caregiver needs in support of that child. So it's absolutely free. Another thing that's real special about our service is once you're a client of ours, you're a client for the rest of your life. And so if anybody ever needs to come back and see us, they can do that with just a phone call. Abuse can be cyclical in a sense of different developmental stages in a child's life can trigger different issues. So if we're working with little Susie at age 7, we may not be able to work on things related to dating or relationships and things like that. So if she needs to come back and see us at 13, let's say, takes a phone call. We've been around long enough to where I get calls from folks that are adults who came to see us as kids. And I think one of the most special calls I ever got was a woman called me and said, I've met the man of my dreams, and I just want to make sure my radar's not broken. Can I come see somebody?
Oh, wow.
And it was awesome. So a couple things happened there. One is she had the insight, so she learned how to take care of herself and control everything in her life, but that we were still her safe place. And so she came back 2 sessions, she was out of there, and that's all she needed. And so, sometimes we'll get adults who will call us and come back, and I'm real proud that they're able to do that.
Absolutely. That's just a testament to the services that you provide. That's amazing. Tell me this, is it just in Collin County? I know there's some others around our immediate area,
Sure.
But is this a nationwide deal?
It is a nationwide. There are 700 and so advocacy centers nationwide. In Texas, there's about 70. Every kind of major metropolitan area has one. There's a Dallas Children's Advocacy Center, Denton County, Grayson County, Rockwall County, all local counties. There's some counties, Texas is kind of big, and so there are, like in Amarillo, they cover 7 counties, I believe, at that advocacy center because there's more cows than children up there. So we're independent, so we're an independent nonprofit, so we're able to meet our community's needs. So every advocacy center can kind of meet their own community's needs. But we do have a state organization that we belong to and a national organization, so we're accredited. We do have standards that we have to make sure that we follow to call ourselves a children's advocacy center, and part of that is our protocols and how we work with our partners. Texas is unique because the children's advocacy centers are actually written in the Texas Family Code, which give us some mandates of what we need to do, but also allows us to share information with law enforcement and child protective services openly in working our cases. So it makes things a lot easier that the law says we can do it.
Absolutely.
But it also gives us some mandates of things that we have to do to make sure that we're meeting those standards and we're protecting kids.
So young Dan, graduating from high school, I doubt saw himself ending up in a career helping abused children. So how do we make the leap? How do we graduate high school, go off to college, and then what happens?
It is quite an interesting leap, actually.
All right.
So I finished high school, and I was going to be a Catholic priest, and that was my plan. And so I learned through the process that very limited the bachelor's degrees you could get if you were going to go to the seminary. I think it was like philosophy and English. They seemed dumb to me.
Right.
So my goal was I wanted to do kind of inner city work. I was already thinking of service and what I wanted to do with my life. So I went to North Texas to get a social work degree. And I was looking for a helping profession. I wasn't too sure which one I was going to pick, so I'm looking through the catalog, and social work had no math in the degree plan at the time. So I felt that was God speaking to me, you're going to be a social worker. So I went to North Texas with every intent to go there, get my social work degree, and go to the graduate theological seminary and finish that, what my plan was. There was another plan for me, because I was one of 2 guys in the whole social work program. And I met my wife there, Maria, and we've been married 33 years. And so she's also a social worker. And Again, there was another plan for me. So we met.
So she helped pull you off the path to priesthood.
She did, and actually it was a discussion after we started dating because I was honest with her, and she hit me, not in a violent way, but she's like, "Well, what are you doing dating me then? What's going on here?" Yeah. I said, "Well, I kind of like you." And so there was another path, and so we had a great wedding. And so that changed directions. And as my dad once said, it was the closest I could come to being in the priesthood without being celibate.
Right.
Social work. And so I started my career as a child protective service investigator in Dallas. And while I did that, I was going to graduate school to finish up my master's in social work. And kind of stayed in this. I had a professor who said, you got to try child welfare work as a social worker. It'll teach you more about life than anything. And I did that, and I'm not smart enough to switch. I've stayed doing this for 35 years.
And so to that point, you'll learn more about life doing this type of work than anything else. What'd you learn? What were your takeaways?
My takeaway is I was a white kind of privileged guy from North Dallas. And so I needed to learn about life. And I learned about humans and human need. And I learned about empathy. I learned about life is really different in a lot of different places, and people have a lot of needs. And yeah, there's people who hurt kids, but there's people who are really trying hard too and just need some help. And so I learned that, and that really was my drive. I wanted to help people. And so I was lucky enough to have a position when I was at CPS in what we call the Family Preservation Unit. So it's the first kind of unit of its kind in the state of Texas. It was a federal grant, and I was able to get all I had was 8 cases. And I was able to work with families intensively, go to their homes, help them solve the problems they needed to be healthy, happy families, to get through issues related to mental illness, issues related to poverty, issues related to substance abuse, and help them get to a point where they could be protective, positive parents for their kids. And again, taught me more than anything. I've just learned about people and learned this is what I want to do. And it made sense because I got to be part of a solution. And it was an important one because it involved kids.
And so I think a lot of people associate social work with kind of a softer personality. And that ain't you, my friend.
No,
that's not you.
I'm not so soft.
So tell me, did that have any factor in kind of coming through? Did you have to change the way that you are? Did other people change kind of views around you in terms of you going into the social work field?
No, it really didn't change me. This is who I am, and this is who I've been. And I think that's the drive that's got me here, is that I think it's important. And I've worked with lots of students through the years, and one of the things I tell them is you've got to have a little bit of arrogance in doing this work and know you're doing great stuff because there's so many things coming at you. You can't be soft and be a good social worker because you've got all these systems that are coming at you. There's bad press for social workers. Like, they think they're tree huggers. Right. If you work in the child protective service things, all you hear is the bad press. You don't hear about the lives they save every single day. And so you get a lot of negative input at you. Not everybody's really excited to be involved with us because there's been a pretty big crisis in their family, and some of them don't realize what that crisis is and how it may affect them. So you've got to be driven. You've got to have an attitude a little bit because you're doing great stuff, and know you're doing that because the burnout rate is really high in this profession. And if you don't develop those mechanisms early in your career, you're going to leave. And I've seen a lot of folks leave, unfortunately.
Well, and let's dig a little bit deeper there in terms of what mechanisms you've had to develop, because, you deal with the heaviest of the heavy.
Yeah.
You deal with little kids who suffer abuse from the people that they trust the most in this world. It's hard to think of getting a lot heavier than that. So when you approach these situations, especially as young Dan, right?
Yeah.
You've been at this, I think you said 33 years now?
Almost 35 years now, yeah.
Almost 35 years. So as you first come into this profession, you start seeing these things for the first time. How did you focus your mindset, or what type of mechanisms did you rely upon to get past that initial barrier where most people do burn out?
I learned really, and it was part of this was insight, part of it was my training. So as I kind of worked through my graduate degree, I was actually trained as a clinical social worker, so as a therapist. But so part of that training, part was just insight. I just developed balance, as I call it. I had, I worked really hard throughout my career, and I still do, making sure I have enough positive things in my life to combat the negative things. I always say things you think happen to kids, it's 10 times worse than that. And again, I've seen some horrible things in my career. but I make sure I have enough to balance that. And one of the reasons we have the Children's Advocacy Center is that we're all in one place. We support each other. So not just for the clients, but the staff there. So being able to sit down with somebody that day and discuss things. My wife, Maria, and I, again, she's also a clinical social worker. We've had a deal my whole career that I don't talk about the cases because she's a mom. She does different stuff. She runs a food pantry, and she can't hear those stories. And so I can tell her it's been a horrible day, and she's wonderful, and I can tell her she knows when it's bad. But the folks I work with, we can talk about the cases. We can talk about what's going on and get the support. So making sure those mechanisms are there. But my whole career, I've made sure I have other things in my life to make sure there's balance there. And it was a little harder before I had kids. Actually, it's easier when I had kids. People say, gosh, this is, would be harder when you have kids. It actually was positive in the sense of I had this great joy that I could go home to also to combat the negative that I had. But also just making sure I put myself first, my family first, to balance that out. Too many people get, I think, too involved in their career and get lost. And when you get lost, it's really hard to find your way back.
And you see this all the time. You mentioned the burnout rate is so high. What are those warning signs? What do you see in younger social workers that are in your field that you say, hey, I got lights flashing here, alarms are going off, they're headed down the wrong path, I need to pull them back? What do you see?
First thing I see is their priorities change. And often they spend too much time at work or think they've got to do the next case, got to do that. I can't go away. I don't have that balance is what you see. But often you see anxiety, depression. They have, their eating habits change, their sleep patterns change, things like that. They lose their sense of humor. That's probably the worst one. When you lose your sense of humor, you're heading down the path of what we call vicarious trauma and on the path to burnout. When you start losing the good things and forget. There's a lot of negativity. And I think one of the things, and I think lawyers have a hard time with this too sometimes, is that we see so much darkness that we forget about the light. We forget there's good stuff. And I think that's when people start getting that thing in front of their face where they don't see the good stuff that's going on. One of the things that I did, I coached both my kids' soccer teams from kindergarten through into high school. And for me, that was such a balance for me because I got to have fun with kids who weren't coming to me with their hair on fire in a crisis. We were just having fun. And I got to be with my own sons too, which was fun. We had a great time. And so for me, it helped me see the light piece of that, the positivity of being a parent, being an adult in this world, that not everybody is evil because you get kind of warped to the world. And I still do sometimes. You think that, gosh, everybody's out to hurt somebody. But if you have that balance, you can hopefully combat that.
And so do you have a daily routine or a ritual? We hear a lot, especially these days, about gratitude and gratitude journals and things like that. Do you have some sort of a practice to help keep that front of mind? Because there's always times where you're under the gun. Maybe it's a bigger case. It's about to go to trial that you're deep in prep on. Mm-hmm. I deal with this too, where my normal routine gets skewed because I'm pushed into, hey, I have to focus on all this for this season, if you will. And then, sometimes it's kind of hard to get back. So what do you do to combat that?
Well, my daily routine, it consists of just making sure I have time for myself. Some things that naturally have happened is, make sure I get enough sleep. I mean, it's as simple as that. Make sure I'm eating right. Something Maria and I do every morning is we wake up 30 minutes early and we get a cup of coffee and just sit in bed. And we might have the TV on, but we just have some time for each other. I'm starting the day on a positive note. When you start the day, going, your blood pressure's up, your heart rate's already up. You're not coming down from that. So I work really hard to start my day in a positive way. Now, it's unpredictable as the day goes, but again, if there's big cases and things like that, making sure I have that balance. And I've got a lot of great people in my life to tell me when they see something's going on. That's the other thing I suggest to people a lot is have trusted people in your life to let you know, because we often don't see it first.
Right. But
the people I work with, the people I love, they see it pretty quickly. And I have folks who aren't afraid to come into my office and say, Dan, something's off today. You're not yourself, or you're not being your happy self, or I've noticed your head's down as opposed to up. So having those mechanisms there, not necessarily a daily routine, but making sure those things are there in my life to offset, again, the thing. Because sometimes when we're in the forest, you can't see those trees. And to have wonderful people in your life to let you know, hey, you're not doing so good right now.
And to that point, too, it's amazing how we kind of develop this mentality of and I just got to clear this next hurdle, and then I'll get back to doing what I'm doing, or and then things will get better. And then right after you clear that hurdle, guess what?
Yeah.
There's 2, 3, 4 more ahead of you. And so keeping that kind of daily rhythm of starting off on a positive note, I love that. Yeah. I mean, there's hundreds of books written out there, on getting up early or having a morning routine. For that very reason, you start off, making your bed, right? Admiral McCraven, make your bed. That's your first win of the day.
Yeah.
You have coffee with your wife. I have a morning routine where I get my quiet time and kind of time to refresh me. But then I think also having that thing that you're looking forward to.
Yes.
Right? I was just listening to, I think it was maybe a Tim Ferriss podcast, and one of his guests said, one of the things that I do with my kids every night is, what are you excited about? What are you looking forward to? And I thought that was such a fantastic idea because it's not only, I'm preparing for this day. I'm preparing for this thing that I'm really looking forward to, whether it's a vacation or, whatever it is. For kids, it can be anything. I'm looking forward to recess today. But I think that's just a really positive thing that all this, because when it comes down to it, you can control your morning. You can control what time you get up. You can control what's going on. But then once you step out that front door, or once you take the kids to school, or once you walk into the office, kind of all bets are off a little bit. You don't necessarily know what's going to be coming at you. Right. And so getting that good, solid start is definitely a trend that I see among
I see it as having a foundation. So if you've got a solid foundation, it's going to take a lot to knock you off that. If you start off with a rocky foundation, it's much easier to knock you off. And that's kind of my philosophy, is I make sure everything's solid there. Does it always work? No, it doesn't always work. There's some pretty tough days. And that's when I have that support. There's been plenty of days in my career where I have driven home crying just because of what I've dealt with. And being a leader, sometimes pretty difficult because you got to keep it together. And I got to be there for the folks. So second I get in that car, that's my time. And I've been very vulnerable with my staff in the past too. But, that drive time sometimes is real positive for me also. Just listening to some music, having some calming time. And then just, again, enjoying my family and knowing I have kind of a refuge that's I look forward to going to.
And leading an organization like this, where not only you're having to go through all this, but everybody in your building is. Yeah. The police officers, the counselors, the admins. I mean, everybody in your building is having to go through this. How do you lead that team? What are some things that you do that you think effectively helps keep them on task, keep them with their heads where they need to be, and support them?
Sure. One is I walk the walk, so they see it from me. I put my family first, and there's kind of a joking little saying that I've had for years, but I said, if your family doesn't come first, you suck. It's as simple as that.
It's pretty straightforward.
And people get it. So I've walked that walk. I go to my kids' stuff. I've been to, they're older now, but I didn't miss an assembly. I didn't miss a game. And I expect everybody there to do the same thing also. So doing that, I actively take care of myself. They see that. But also, as a leader, that open door that I'm vulnerable to, and they see that and they understand it, but that allows them the ability to come to me when they need to also. And we give a lot of grace because of what we do. Someone needs a day off. It's not uncommon for me to say, split, go home. You get it. I call it a Dan day. So it's not on the books. Just go. Go take care of yourself. Go take care of your kid. Whatever you need to do, go. My philosophy is, the folks that I work with and I lead will give many more hours of time to the kids and our agency than we'll ever give to them. So that flexibility and understanding that this is difficult work. So on the other side of that, we've got to be flexible and supportive too. And so doing everything we can to provide that support so they feel like I'm in a safe place. I can be vulnerable, but I can do this job and put my heart into it. Working with these kids and doing these things, it's much more than a job, as you know. It takes your heart and soul. And on the other part, it hurts your heart and soul. And realizing that and going through it myself and learning from that helps me be a much better leader.
From the leadership standpoint, somebody comes into your office, says, we got problems, hands you this problem. How do you approach it?
Let's all sit down. Let's talk about it. And so we'll sit down and I'll bring in anybody else who needs to, and we'll solve it together. When you solve a problem together, the solution is, number one, I'm not the smartest guy there, so I need other people to help me. And so bringing the folks in there to to solve that problem together. But then you get buy-in from everybody too, and then at the end, everybody feels like they were part of it. And so the victory is also a charge for people. When you solve a problem and you come out of it in a positive way, then everybody did. It wasn't just, oh, Dan told us to do this, so we did it, and that's the problem. Well, everybody accomplished it. And then you work off that. I think that's how people grow, is they get an opinion. And so we use a very collaborative approach, and that's my approach as a leader, is to sit down and process things and come up with that together. There may be times I've got to draw, it's coming to me, so I may have to say this is the way we're doing it.
Right.
But we're gonna kind of talk it out and figure out the best option. So when they're part of the option and part of the solution, they're very motivated to solve the problem.
What about outside of that context? Say a family issue or just a personal issue, a problem arises. What's your mindset going into that?
Well, one thing I have learned in doing this work is my problems aren't so bad. And I tell myself, and my wife and I tell ourselves, we have this discussion actually quite often when we're, deal with what we might call a crisis. If I step back for a second and go, my problems are not bad. If I look at the work I do, the work she does, the things we see in society, we're making way more of this than I need to. And, we've had some tough times like everybody has, but to step back for a second and go, we've got a lot of great stuff. So looking at the positive piece of that. Now, does it happen right away? No, it doesn't happen right away. It may take some insight a little bit. But again, for us to challenge each other to, stop for a second. Yeah, this sucks today, but look at all this great stuff, that's going on in your life and all the positive piece. It could be way worse than it is. So, let's take joy in the positive and keep moving forward. And that's what keeps us moving forward every time.
And so when it comes to kind of inner monologue, right? You talking to yourself. How does that go for you? Are you pretty easy on yourself? Are you super hard on yourself? Has there been a change over time?
Well, you get crotchety as you get old. So just just letting you know there. I rely a lot more on my spirituality than I may have in my earlier days. And so some of that inner monologue is processing through that. And what I've had to learn is give myself grace like I do other people. And one challenge I have for myself is that treating myself like I'm going to treat others in the opposite. I'm a big believer in the golden rule, and I've taught that to my boys. But sometimes we don't do that for ourselves. So I treat people. I want to think I'm supportive as a leader and positive, but I got to do that for me too. And sometimes I'm much more harder than myself and judgmental than I give to other people. And I have people who will challenge me on that, especially my wonderful wife. Who are like, why are you, if someone walked in your office and gave you this problem, what would you tell them? And it would be the opposite of what I'm telling myself.
I think that's a pretty wide-ranging problem for people who are driven towards something, right?
Yeah.
We're hard on ourselves.
Sure.
And I know for me, it is taken a lot of time, and I'm still what I feel like at the beginning of the process of being kind to myself.
Sure.
Right. And a lot of it has to do too with, what are you hearing around you? What kind of environment are you in? Are you in an environment of people that encourage you? Are you in an environment of people who are, lukewarm? Are you in an environment of people who actively discourage you?
Right.
And I think when you're working on treating yourself with more respect, with more kindness, with more grace, then the people who surround you make a big difference too.
Absolutely.
And so what do you do in terms of how do you go about surrounding yourself with those people who push you forward instead of pull you back?
Well, it's easier than you think to get rid of toxic people in your life. And that's the first step, is if someone's negative, I'm not going to have anything to do with them.
You just tell them, hey, you suck?
Yeah, basically. I'm going to try my best not to be around them. And what I have found is that, again, then people who are positive gravitate to you because they want to be positive too. Mm-hmm. And you're going to have negative people, and you can fall in that trap really easy. It's always great to start talking negative about something or moaning and groaning, but not to fall in that trap. And that's a challenge, and that's something I always work on too. So surrounding with positive people, again, having that balance. I've got enough negativity. I don't need any more. And so, if that's, put on top of what I deal with every day, I don't think I can function. I'd be an angry guy, and I don't want to be an angry guy.
And so how have you gotten through that process, kind of along the same lines of what I'm trying to get through right now, is of treating yourself more kindly? Do you catch yourself with these negative thoughts of, Dan, you screwed that up. I can't believe you did that. And then catch yourself doing that and try to stop and then reframe it. Do you just stop? Kind of walk me through what goes on in Dan's brain.
Kind of exactly what you're talking about is sometimes I have to stop and reframe it, or again, talking to somebody I trust about it. Here's kind of how I'm thinking about something. Here's how I'm processing it. Tell me where I'm going with this. What am I distorting in this? And so getting some feedback and not being afraid to get feedback. I think as a leader, sometimes it's really difficult because I've got to be the strong one or whatever. And so being vulnerable and asking for some feedback is hard. But it's something I've tried to do more and more, and to allow somebody to kind of give me that feedback. Again, I've got a wonderful relationship with Maria, but I've got great folks at work too that I can go to and say, here's where I am with this. Help me. What am I seeing wrong, or where am I going? So identifying that is best I can. Sometimes I'm good at it, sometimes not so good at it.
And I think that's one of the worst stereotypes out there about leaders is you have to carry everything on your shoulders.
Yeah.
Right? None of us can do that.
No.
We're just humans. Some people are better at it than others, at least on the outside. But without having that feedback loop, one, you're carrying it all, right? And two, you're not getting the buy-in from your team.
Exactly. Yeah.
They're not learning. What happens if you walk out and you get hit by the proverbial bus? I think everybody in my office has been hit by the bus multiple times.
Yeah.
The proverbial bus. What happens if you go out there and you don't know, or if I go out there, I get hit by a bus, nobody knows what I do because I never talk about it.
Right.
I never get feedback. And obviously the effect of that is you're not getting solid feedback from good people that can make things even better.
Right.
So,
and people aren't growing.
People aren't growing.
I always say, the best leader can take a vacation because they got it and because you've taught them that.
Right.
I've got a lot of folks who I have mentored, or they were my student at one time, that are doing amazing things, and nothing makes you more proud as a leader to see someone that you've been with and been a mentor for just succeed and blossom and do that. That's one of the biggest charges I ever have. I mean, that just tells me I was successful, and it makes you really proud.
One of the things that I love about you, Dan, is that you're always growing. You're always learning and working towards improving, right? What are some of the things that you do to improve in any aspect of your life, whether it be spiritually, physically, as a boss, as a leader? What are some things that you focus on?
Slowing down is important, and you can call it praying, meditating, whatever. I think that for me, just stopping. I'm in my head a lot. I'm a very cerebral guy, so that process time to do that helps me kind of get to where I need to be. I can work through those things in my head. So that quiet time, again, however you want to frame it, is one way I am constantly kind of looking at, how's this? Is it positive? Is it negative? But also, again, I rely on my relationship with Maria to grow and to make sure that I'm in a good place. She's a much better therapist than I've ever been, and so she'll tell me, and she's my wife, so she'll let me know. There's just so much going on in the world. These have been the toughest 2 years of my life. During the pandemic, Maria lost her mom. I lost both my parents. On top of, I was in charge of keeping employees and kids safe at the Advocacy Center during that time. So there was a lot of time for reflection and a lot of time of stress and things like that. But through all that, what I did, and I purposely did, was made sure I had time for myself. Again, call it quiet time, whatever, sitting out in the backyard, or just driving, or just shutting the door of my office. Just lots of different things that I would just, I just needed some time to reflect, to pray, to acknowledge, I'm not the greatest, because sometimes you get that attitude that I'm vulnerable too, and it's okay. And once I admitted that to myself and allowed people to help me, it made life a lot easier.
Going through those toughest 2 years of your life, what are some takeaways? What'd you learn?
I'm a lot stronger than I thought it was. I thought it was pretty tough, and I'm a pretty callous guy in doing this work, and not in a negative way, but in all the things that the people around me love me a lot, and were there every step of the way, and so that was pretty cool. My wife, my kids surprised me during it. My boys did. I remember texting them that just basically I just said, "Grandpa's dying." It was and both of them were on their way. That was no questions asked. They were there, and they just were there. It was pretty cool. People at work, all of a sudden food shows up, didn't ask. They just all of a sudden food showed up. And it's just, I mean, you find out, how lucky you are. And, kind of going back to, the wonderful life of finding out how lucky really I am. And the more you give, the more you get back. And allowing people to give back to you. Sometimes it's hard, but when you need them, all that comes back to you. And it's pretty cool. And I've really learned that.
Wow. What are you passionate about?
Wow, a lot of stuff. Used to be the Cowboys, but that blown that off. But I'm passionate about my work. The work that I do. Yeah, I mean, this is what I'm supposed to. I truly believe this is what I'm supposed to. This is what I was born to do. It's what I'm. I mean, it's a vocation, not just an occupation for me. So I'm passionate about that. I'm being a good husband is super important to me. You know that, and being a good man. There's not enough good men out there. I've noticed that through my travels, and then being a great dad has been. I mean, those are my priorities in life, is making sure my sons grow up and have empathy, and they're not social workers. So one's going to be an engineer, one's into computers. They're not social workers, but for them to understand giving back, and both of them have volunteered countless hours of work at my center, at my wife's work. Understanding that piece and just being a good person is my passion. There's not enough just good people that want to be kind, and that's something I've definitely noticed through working with kids, through working with my sons and different things. People forgot how to be kind, and that's something I'm passionate about. I try every day, and am I great at it? But I'm working at it, and that's a challenge.
And so one of the things that I often reach out to you for is parenting advice.
Yeah.
Dan, Olivia's doing X, Y, Z, or Jacob's doing this. Talk to me. Yeah. Talk me off the ledge.
Yeah.
What are some tips you can give us, dads specifically?
Sure. Well, number one, that dads have a very important role in kids' lives. I think a lot of dads traditionally don't see themselves as a co-parent. They see them almost an antecedent, mom's in charge. That's just not true. Kids need dads a lot. The other part is it's not that bad. Again, taking things into perspective. And I remember when my boys were little, and when it's in your face, it's bad. But to step back and go, yeah, you know what? This is part of life, and it's actually a learning thing for my kids, and they're going to figure it out. That it's hard to screw kids up. It really is. You got to try, and unfortunately, people do try. But if
you see the result of that,
yes, I do. But if you're consistent, you're loving, you're present. That's the other part about parenting, is not just being there, but being present. Kids are going to do okay. They're going to be great because they're going to see you, and kids, they model their parents. That's just what they do, and they're going to test things out. They're going to screw up. That's why they have good parents, for us to come to us and bail them out. Whether that's financially, the principal's office, or teach them how to hit a ball differently because they're missing they can't hit a curve. Those are the things that we can, especially as parents and as dads, to be there.
And I think the last time I called you, it was my middle kiddo was acting out at home, mm-hmm. and you told me, you walked me back from the ledge on that one, and what'd you tell me?
It's not that bad.
It's not that bad.
Yeah.
But that's actually a good thing.
Yeah. Exactly.
Why is that a good thing?
It's a good thing because they trust you. And as parents, our kids, they act the worst with us. And there's a reason for that, because they trust us, they love us, and they know we're not going to let them down. And we're going to see, and the old joke of, you send your kid to a friend's house and their parents say, your child's the most one. They put their dishes away, and they said, yes, ma'am. And you're like, who? You sure that you're talking about my child? When they come to our house, again, we're getting the stuff, as I say, but that's because they're supposed to test it out on us. They love us the most. They know we're not going to let them down, and so they're going to try it out. That's what they should be doing as kids. That's what we should be teaching them as parents: is let them fall, let them do that. They're waiting on our reaction, and unfortunately, a lot of parents don't pass that test and hurt their kids. Other parents who are loving and wonderful, their kids thrive. That's what I'm going for.
Awesome. Dan, thank you so much. Anything else? Any last words for our audience before we wrap up?
There's a lot of good stuff out there. I know we've talked about child abuse and some negative. I think it's our our moral obligation to help kids. Again, that's my passion. I support folks to just watch out for kids, that it definitely is our job to take care of them, whether they're ours or somebody else's, but be always watching, and just be kind and be good.
All right. Thank you so much.
You bet.
Dan, where can people find you on social media or the Children's Advocacy Center?
Well, our website at the Children's Advocacy Center is best place. There's all sorts of great information. I've got some information on there too.
Okay.
It's caccollincounty.org. Pretty simple it's long, but it's pretty simple to find. We've got lots of great opportunities. One of the things we haven't talked about is we have a lot of community education that we do. We will come to, we've got folks, me or somebody else, will come to an organization and talk about different things, internet safety, how to keep kids safe, different things like that, protective parenting. So we'll come to your organization, we'll come to your PTA meeting, things like that. We want to get the word out and make sure people know that. But also to support us. We are a charity. We're a nonprofit organization. And when you're supporting us, we're very good stewards of that support.
And you don't have to buy a trip to Italy to
No, you don't have to. I support if you want to buy a trip to Italy. That's great. But again, that's our community's keeping our kids safe. And we've got a wonderful community here in Collin County that has supported us for years. And we're building a second facility right now, and because there's more kids in Collin County, and we want to make sure that no child waits for any of our services. So soon, in August of this year, we're going to have two facilities, one in McKinney and one in Plano, and those will be full facilities to take care of children, both from the healing, the justice piece of that, and to make sure, again, this is a great place to raise your kids, and they're going to be safe.
All right. Thank you so much, Dan. Appreciate you being on the Driven Crowd podcast.
So happy to be here.
All right. Thank you.